Hey there, I'm Sarah Hodges, and this is Executives Uncut, the live podcast where we provide solutions for the corporate cycle of hell. Now, today I'm here with Jake Dunlap, CEO of Skaled, with a K, to talk about the future of sales. Welcome, Jake.
Awesome. I love that little intro music.
Thanks.
Just kind of gets you going there. It's like a little 70s like funk beat or something.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I love it.
I like it.
Well, Jake, tell me more about Skaled.
Yeah, so we are a sales consulting and strategy company. A lot of times consulting firms aren't necessarily the sexiest or the most revered. And I think what I wanted to do that was different, I started the company 8 years ago, was really be a consulting firm that was focused on tactics and not just helping companies with strategy, but also helping with follow through and execution. And so in all of our engagements, we're not just focused on producing the assessment and analysis, we're really focused on what happens next and the work that needs to get done. And so we have about 30 people all over the US and globe. We have people in Canada, the UK, and we're really working with companies that are trying to solve various challenges as they scale their sales and revenue engine.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, you're right. There are so many sales consultants out there. Besides follow through, what do you think differentiates you?
I think it's our mix of tactical resources and the fact that all of our team members came from sales, either sales operations, sales enablement, sales, as opposed to your they call it the traditional consulting background. And so you have actually people who understand what does change management look like and what does change look like and how to get it done fast and as painless as possible in a sales org, which is much different than doing change in a operations or a finance group.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, most of our engagements, for example, when someone comes to us and says, Jake, we're trying to figure out ways to drive more leads, whether that's inbound or outbound. Mm-hmm. What we really try to focus on is, one, taking what we have that's already working. So our goal is to not replace with, completely rip and replace everything if we don't have to. Understand the goals, understand, the gap and maybe forecast, and then really not just put together the strategic plan to get from point A to point B, but make sure that they're, reset up their tool set, rewrite messaging, stay on to optimize that messaging over time. And so our team isn't just, again, saying, hey, here's what you should do. Our team is in the technology. They're in the trenches, in people's G Drive or OneDrive, rewriting content, redeploying it, retraining the team on it, and making sure that it actually sees results and outcomes. Because that's what people want, right? Nobody wants a 80-page binder that tells them all the things that are wrong with their business. They want 8% increase in new meetings. And so we really try to align on business outcomes, not just deliverables.
That's awesome. It sounds like a really cool collaboration of coaching and consulting. Like you coach them, you help guide them, you help them figure out where the gaps are, but then you get in there with them and help them, tie up the gaps, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes people need to be taught how to fish, and sometimes there's a lot of fish. So you need extra fishermen, right? Sometimes it's not just about that. And I think that's where a lot of consulting and even sales training falls flat, is that it's so focused on not the follow through. And it's the follow through and reinforcement that's the make or break when it comes to change.
So what is the most common advice in terms of follow through that you give to your clients?
It's that with any initiative, the deployment. So we spend all this time in intake and all this creation. And we have this issue in sales where we treat the go live of something as the event. In reality, the go live of a new process, a new piece of technology, anything that you're doing is step zero. That instead it's all about the reinforcement plan you build, for is there an e-learning track? Is there a continual, a brown bag lunch track? Anything is better than nothing. And so with all of our engagements, and this goes for anybody, you don't have to work with us, you can do it yourself. Thinking about the implementation date or the contract sign date or whatever is step zero. The real hard work starts whenever you realize your goal is to drive to an outcome and see that through.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense. So then, since you're focused on the outcome, since you focus on the end result, what do you say to all the teachings, very popular teachings out there right now that are all about relationship selling and empathy-based selling?
Well, I think that all of these have a place, right? And I think that, we were talking a little bit before about empathy and what that means. What I know is that buyers have more on their plate than ever before. They're more distracted than ever before. And what they're really looking for is someone who adds value. And value is somewhat determined by what the buyer thinks it is. But for most people, value is how are you going to make their lives easier or get them promoted or make them more money? Again, it's just different flavors of quantity, quality, time, and money. And what I have found is that, one, the word empathy, I feel like gets thrown around a lot and can mean different things. But at the end of the day, the best sellers know how to align to value and making sure that the customer understands that this is the utility they're going to get from it, or the outcome that they're going to get from it versus the utility, which is like what the product does or the service offering is, as opposed to what it's going to do to impact them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think in some ways that is my definition of empathy. It's like really seeing them, really understanding their needs and being able to kind of like a chameleon, meet them, where they're at and get them to where they want to go. Do you say that's pretty aligned or no?
No, I think that's pretty aligned. What I feel like the gap is, so you're talking to an individual, or it's how well do you know their space? To me, what made me a good seller, as I've trained thousands of salespeople now at this point in my life, is it's more about aligning around the persona. What does this job do? How does this company make money? How is this job KPI'd? How is this person bonused? If you don't know that, you can't help them. You can be somebody's friend and you can give them some advice. But to me, and I think that's where kind of the departure is from this concept of like empathy, it really means you know what it's like to walk in their shoes. Not that you understand them and you ask them some questions. It's that I know what this job does. I know how you're bonus. I know how you're KPI'd. And therefore, I can make a recommendation because I'm an expert in your space. Not just I'm a likable person. And I think that's the disconnect that a lot of people have, is they focus too much on getting to know just those details and not enough about truly being an expert in that space, in that, region, in that world.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I noticed that as I work with individuals, you really have to scale out and see the overall system and how that person integrates into the system of the organization, and then how that organization fits into, like you said, the world, overall. Yeah. Nice. So one other thing that you mentioned prior to us having this podcast is that you guys leverage tech pretty uniquely. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I think for us in particular, what we start to think about is what's the optimized process? And then from that optimized process, let's call it, what are the bottlenecks? There's a whole process called the theory of constraints. There's a great book. It's an old book called The Goal, right? Okay. And what the goal talks about is this whole concept that as a individual and as you look at a system, there's always a limiting constraint. And what you have to be doing is, and then look at am I purchasing technology that solves for that? Or am I purchasing technology that solves for something completely different? And I think that is the gap that I see, is that people invest in tech without really thinking through, like, is this going to unclog my biggest bottleneck? One, and two, it's the implementation. It's what I just talked about. It's like, are they really truly thinking through what the implementation is going to look like? How is this going to go live? How are we going to deploy it? And that's why most people, they just don't do a very good job of getting to deployment. And they buy it, and then they're 3 months in, 6 months in, they're like, hey, like, what happened to that thing we were doing? Like, why aren't we seeing the results that we want to see? You know what I mean? And so I just feel like people don't take the time to really analyze where their gaps are. And then they dovetail that. Then they don't think about, look, this is a journey. Again, purchasing the product and going through the implementation, that's step 0. And so I think, again, for me, I think it's those, when I think about sales tech, that's the big areas of opportunity. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I'm switching tech all the time as we continue to iterate, And that makes me ask, like, I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of systems and organizations and an iterative process. Like, it's much easier for an individual to go through an iterative process. You start something and then you layer something new, or you shift and you pivot a little bit. How do you guys handle that? This is kind of a surprise question. How do you guys handle that when you go into an organization? How do you support iterations and continued development?
Well, I think part of it is you have to have that mindset. Meaning, like, let's look at let's look at marketing, for example. Marketing hires a performance marketing or a website development agency. You never stop optimizing your paid spend. You never stop optimizing your website for conversions. Why do we think that sales is solved by set it and forget it? Right? Why do we think that if you're pumping tens of thousands of data points through some type of like outbound system or tool, why aren't you optimizing that every 2 to 4 weeks, constantly, 24/7? Same thing as your sales process. You've now moved 100-something people through your process. Are you looking at the data? Look, here's our bottleneck. It's the demo stage. We're going 28 days here. How do we get that to 22 days? It just, in sales, we just do not have that mindset. And we have to change to the world is moving too fast. We cannot continue to optimize every 6 months, or even look at our sales methodology every 2 years. So that is the gap. The gap is that we have a very slow brain mindset around optimization, and our world is just like sprinting past a lot of us.
Well, so speaking of optimization, we talked a little bit, again, prior to this podcast about creating a better digital presence. So, how can I or another consultant, right, or coach or anybody who's in sales optimize my digital presence or our digital presence in 2021?
Well, I think step one is, who's your audience? Do you want to be LinkedIn famous, or do you want to be famous in your industry? And for me, whenever I see people on LinkedIn and they sell into industrial manufacturing and they're out there giving sales advice, I'm like, what a wasted opportunity. And I get it. Like, if you want to go be a sales influencer and start your own sales training, consult, whatever, amazing, go do it. I love you. God bless. But the point is this: if you instead want to be successful at sales in the industry you're in, who is your audience? If your audience is VPs of operations, this is a great stat. I did a poll. I think we had like 1,400 respondents. And I said, how do you use LinkedIn? 86% of people out of like 1,400 said they use LinkedIn for networking, news, and learning, not jobs. That was 14%. So why does your LinkedIn profile read like a resume?
Yeah.
If true. You are there to network, you need to look like an expert. Yeah. You need to look like, hey, I'm not Jake Dunlap sales consulting, whatever. I'm Jake Dunlap. I help organizations generate 15% more, from their outbound efforts and close 20% more of their deals. I don't know, right?
And I just heard a lot of concrete ROIs. Like, here's what I offer. Outcomes, right? Yeah.
So anyway, that is what's up, is that most salespeople still haven't made that change. The profile feels like a throwaway, not realizing the reason nobody accepts your connect rate and you don't get the meetings when you DM people is because it says senior account executive and you've got some shitty picture from your buddy's wedding where like your arm's cut off. And you wonder why, like someone who's a VP of finance is like, oh, I really want to connect with Tim in Columbus, who's, sitting there with his, whatever you call those things, corsage or boutonniere or whatever they're called. Boutonniere, yeah, boutonniere, whatever it is. Like, it's silly. Like, my friends, you see who's viewing your profile. You're reaching out to connect with people on LinkedIn all the time. Yeah. Why do you have the picture from your frat brother's wedding as your headshot? It's not a good look.
Well, so then what's an example of a good look? Like, what's an example of someone else who has a really great digital presence?
Look, there's a lot of people who I think do a really good job here. I mean, I'll toot our own horn. I think Mackenzie Boley on our team, I think she does a really good job. There's another woman, Amelia. I'm so bad. She's going to be like, I can't believe you forgot my last name. But I'll drop it. I'll send it over. You can drop it in the show notes for later. But again, what these people do, the other thing, kind of the next step here is that you have an opinion. You don't have to be loud. You don't need to be boisterous, but there's an opinion there. You know what I mean? Like, that is where you have to feel comfortable. People want to learn from people who have value to give. It's why when you reshare posts, nobody interacts with it, because that's not you, right? And so I think if you think about your digital presence, look, and this is the example, Sarah, I always give, which is, if I had a networking event, and let's say you sell to VPs of operations, I had a networking event in Chicago next week, and there are 25 people there who are VPs of operations, and I'm going to give you a speaking spot. Would you fly to Chicago to go do that? maybe.
Yeah.
Virtually.
Probably.
I mean, I don't know. It depends. Yeah. But
Probably.
pre-COVID,
I have an
the answer
18-month.
was,
Yeah. Pre-COVID, yes, with an 18-month-old at home, but probably yes.
Yeah. So my point is, what do you think is happening on LinkedIn every day? You go and you connect with 100, 200, 300, 400, 1,000 of these VPs of operations that are in your patch, right? Every time you post, they see your content. It's a chance for you to look like an expert. The same way that you would have no problem doing that on stage, you're just doing it on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn is just a part of the future of sales, but I do feel like it's probably one of the most untapped opportunities still for so many.
Yeah. It makes me wonder. I feel like what gets in a lot of people's way is that they don't want to ostracize anybody, right? They don't want anyone to have a bad opinion of them because they're thinking about their audience, like what does this type of audience like, right? And they try to be that thing that they like, and they lose that sense of authenticity. So how do you balance between being authentic and being that expert and like owning your power and not going so far that you ostracize certain people of your audience, or don't you care? Teach me.
You can't have it both ways.
Right.
You can't have it both ways. If you want to be the man or the woman, guess what? People are going to hate you. They're going to talk shit about you behind your back. Doesn't matter what you do, right? Everyone hates from the bottom. And so you've got to realize that, what's that? It's a Chris Brown, like, look at all them hating from outside of the club. They can't even get in, right? So you can't have it both ways. If you truly say, Jake, I really want to be a thought leader in my industry, then every once in a while, you're going to put yourself out there.
Right.
Facts, right? There's not a single person you can think of one single influencer or famous person that doesn't have an equal amount of haters. And
Truth. You've
got to it's okay. It's interesting. So when I started to get really active on LinkedIn, this is like almost exactly 3 years ago. I ran into some people maybe like 7 or 8 months later, some like thought leaders in sales that a lot of people would know these names. And they're like, Jake, I gotta be honest, when you first started posting, I was like, what's, and now they're all doing it. Now everybody's doing it, and that's okay, because look, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it for my own company and I knew that I wasn't doing it from like a place of ego to where I'm like, I want to be seen. I knew that I was doing it to help to build my company, and I was doing it to help those efforts. And the same thing for anybody who's in sales right now. It's the same thing for you. You're not doing it to be some type of like blowhard or some type of, like someone who's like, you're doing it to establish yourself as a thought leader, the same way you would go speak at that speaking event that I gave you, or at the trade show. LinkedIn is just a chance to do that 24/7.
That's awesome. So besides your success story, which is really inspiring in and of itself, because it sounds like what motivated you, what got you past your fears, was that you're representing an entire company, not just you. But can you share another success story with us? Maybe one of your clients?
Yeah, I'll share. There's a few. I'll think of, there's a gentleman, there's a bunch. There's this rep named Adam Fee. He always kind of like comes to mind. Adam worked at a company called Juniper Square. I think he's still there. And Adam was an SDR, and Adam, by the end of this, he was setting like 20 meetings a month with LinkedIn. And it's a real estate and technology company. And so what did Adam do? He just shared like insights on real estate. He's like, hey, this is a new trend. This is a new trend in technology. He wasn't like company. And so, he actually got in trouble. Like, I'll very specifically remember this. Like, he didn't get in trouble. He got in a little bit of trouble because he was getting inbound leads in other people's territories.
Oh,
and which if you're in a bigger company, that's going to happen, And so I think that's the interesting kind of dynamic here. Again, if I was a rep in XYZ territory, I want to be the go-to for that.
Tell me another one. That's awesome.
Let's see, who else like kind of comes to mind. I think like Matt Cross, like that kid was really good. There's a couple of people from the Jets. We work with the Jets and their premium team on their LinkedIn strategy right when COVID hit. And they same thing, setting 20 plus meetings a month purely off LinkedIn. By the way, I'm not saying that you should just go 100% on LinkedIn. I don't think that that's necessarily the right strategy either. I think it's a mix of where do your buyers live, and that's where you should be. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that I'll kind of highlight that. But again, what we work with them on is, again, in sports, you sell you constantly are selling, you can't really sell the team at sometimes. You got to sell the business impact. So are you talking about how by working with the Jets, forget the game? I'm going to help you to up your client retention by 10%. I'm going to help you to do that. So it's like, what are the benefits of buying a suite at MetLife? What are the benefits of, client entertainment? You know what I mean? So I think it's taking it past what you do and what the product is to the outcomes that it can achieve for your clients. And I think that's a theme amongst all of our clients and CEOs and other people that we work with, is that theme that they are able to talk about the impact that they have, not just, the product.
Yeah, I love it. So if you were to wrap all of this up into 3 quick tips for our listeners and viewers, what would they be?
All right, 3 quick tips. I wrote these down too. I don't normally write them down, but I thought that they were good, so I wanted to make sure that I got it. So the first is making sales an experience, meaning in this world of virtual, which is this world that we're in together right now, most sales experiences are boring. You don't send anything in advance to get people excited about meeting with you. In the Zoom, you turn on the Zoom and you stare at each other, or half the time you're staring down. And guess what? Half the time they don't turn their camera on and they're just on email the entire time.
That's so true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't have your camera on and you're not being like, you're not screen sharing, et cetera. So really, I'm encouraging a lot of companies, think about your digital sales experience, because you can win that way. You could have a product that's slightly more expensive. You could have a slightly newer product. If people get that from buying from you, it's different. It's an experience. You can win and you can differentiate, especially in competitive markets. 1, make sales an experience. 2,
awesome.
Importance of tech. In my experience, companies are using maybe 20 to 30% of sales tech that they've already invested in. There's over 1,600 sales technologies that exist today. Most teams are scratching this. It could be even more now. That's from like 20. That was from last year. So there is a 99% chance there's a lot of stuff you're doing in your day to day that you should not be doing. Right. I actually got a really nice note from this guy on LinkedIn. There's some talk I did about how if I was a rep today, and so I got a lot of shit for this too. I was like, I would easily come out of pocket $250 for like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, a tool like Outreach, and maybe some type of like data tool. Why? It's going to make me so much more better. It's like more efficient. There right now, and the problem is most sales operations teams don't understand this tech ecosystem either. So there's a very high likelihood you can look at your tech and you're barely scratching the surface of the investments you've already made, let alone new investments. And third is what we've talked about a little bit, which is LinkedIn. That the power of LinkedIn in B2B in 2022 and 2023 is going to continue to get stronger. And the people that learn to harness the power of their employees will win. I did a post about this I think it was last week. And I went through and I looked at how many times somebody in sales at Google posted in the last 60 days, and then how many times their marketing team did. How many times did reps at LinkedIn post? How many times did marketing? Google, I think Google's like 4,000 of their employees, sales employees, had shared content in the last 30 days. Google corporate page, 25. LinkedIn, 2,500 employees had shared in the last 30 days, 17 posts in the last 30 days. The marketing and organizations that figure out how to harness the power of their sales team, they're going to win, because people buy from, again, we're entering this world of like B2B influencer like land. And that doesn't mean you only talk about sales. It means you also talk about the industry that you're in. So those are my 3 trends: making sales an experience, sales technology. We're scratching the surface on LinkedIn and B2B.
Dang, you schooled me. Like, I have a lot of work to do getting off of this podcast, which is what I love. I love it when I meet with a guest and I learn just as much as I hope people who are viewing or listening are learning. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think is really important for listeners to know?
I mean, we've covered a lot over the last bit here. So I feel like I've just thrown a ton of stuff at people here, and maybe I haven't done a good enough job of like providing solutions. Look, if I'm in sales right now, the 3 things that I walk through are probably the big areas that I would start to think about. I would start to think about, what am I doing today? Am I really being honest with myself about what it is like to buy from me today? Like, is it an experience, or would I say it's meh, right? And then I think, the things we talked about with LinkedIn in particular, I think are something that is very actionable. You can go and fix your profile right now. You can go think about your headline right now. Industry expert, right? And so that would be that would be my kind of parting points to drive home maybe.
So helpful, and the perfect segue to our coaching question. It's a question we just ask all of our viewers to ask yourself to wrap up all of the content you've heard so far today. And the coaching question is, what experience do you want prospects to have when they interact with your digital presence? That's it. And we'll post this again in the days to come so you can check it out and start to really think about that. But journal about that one. What experience do you want prospects to have when they interact with your digital presence? What do you think about that question, Jake?
I think it's great. I think it's, you really have two choices with that question. Put your head in the sand and act like it doesn't exist, or realize that you already have a digital brand. You're just not doing anything about it.
That's so true. I love it. Perfect. Thank you so much for these amazing tips. Where can our viewers find out more about you?
So go check out LinkedIn. It's just Jake Dunlap /Jake Dunlap on LinkedIn. I put out content multiple times a day. Go check out Instagram. It's Jake_Dunlap_. If you can get the Jake Dunlap to sell me his Instagram, this kid, let me tell you, the amount of work and hustle. And he messes with me. He's like, yeah, I'm not ready yet. Like, he won't even entertain offers. So if you can get this Jake Dunlap, that would be fantastic. But I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff on Instagram. I'm trying to get more active there. I used to be active. I kind of went silent for a little bit, but now I'm getting back into it. So those are two really good places to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks everyone else for tuning into this episode of Executives Uncut. Listen, if you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, share with someone who could benefit from it. I know there are a lot of people who could benefit from these tips today. And you can always visit hodgescoaching.com for new episodes, or follow us at Hodges Coaching on LinkedIn or YouTube. I'm Sarah Hodges. This was Jake Dunlap. Thank you again so much, and we will see you in a couple weeks. Bye.